I watched people who were part of like who invented dehumidifiers sit on stage with people who design and build dehumidifiers and install them and argue about the right way to dehumidify. And I learned that when it comes to engineers, there's more than one way to do it. There's pros and cons and there's trade-offs. You're always going to have a trade-off. And it's our job to understand the client's desire and understand which trade-off is best.
Yeah. Hey, and welcome back to the Awakening Spaces podcast. Today, I had the honor of chatting with Scott Randall. He is a builder out of Tampa Bay, Florida. His company is Seven Pines Construction, and he's also the chapter lead for his local BS and beer community. So that's Building Science and Beer, where they meet. It's sort of like a little bit of a building science mastermind. It's hosted all over the U.S. I'm not sure if it's outside of the U.S. or not, but he is the chapter lead in his community. So he's very passionate about building science, but he's also very passionate about building healthier homes. So we dive into all things climate zone 2, Florida climate, what to do, what kind of buildings are being built, how he is going above and beyond code with what he's doing. And we talk about mechanical systems. We really go into a lot of really juicy information in this podcast. If you live in a hot, humid climate, this is going to be a really great podcast episode for you. Scott is such an amazing guy, and I think he really does such a good job of explaining things in a digestible way that makes it really easy to understand. I really enjoyed chatting with him. I had the honor of meeting him and his wife Cindy at Building Science Summer Camp, and they were quickly two of my favorite people that I met there. And then him and his wife are also on the way to having their first baby. His wife is also due in October, so we chatted a little bit about that as well. I hope that you like this episode just as much as I did. So without further ado, let's dive in. Well, welcome to the podcast, Scott. So happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
I would love for you to just share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Scott Randall, builder at Seven Pines Design Build. We're a design build firm here in Tampa, Florida. Historically, we've done fix and flips, new construction development, and last couple of years changed our model more towards for both spec custom homes and custom homes for clients. This year, as of January, we've completely changed our business ethos from offering high performance upgrades to making them standard. And now that's all we do. We build high performance homes. Healthy homes is how we brand them here in Tampa, Florida.
I love that you're doing healthy homes, but I feel like that really means something different for everybody. And you and I, we've chatted, we've sent some Instagram messages back and forth of like, what does this actually mean? So I would love to hear from you, like, what does healthy home mean for Seven Pines?
How we define that is kind of how we got here. So we used to really strive for like Energy Star, high performance type energy metrics. And we realized that consumers weren't really responding to that. It wasn't very marketable. Not many people cared. And then we moved from that wording to high performance, but high performance was even more vague than healthy home. So as we started learning more about healthy home building and the processes over the last couple of years and really diving into it the last 12, 18 months through Building Science and Summer Camp and all those groups, we realized that there's a huge amount of overlap. And so the way that we were building homes was already mostly, it was 90% there for healthy homes. We just decided to explore that a little bit more. We found a niche that really the messaging hits with consumers. People are interested in it. When you say, hey, we build high performance homes, people are like, snooze fest, what does that mean? When you say, hey, we build healthy homes, people go, oh, wait a minute, I want to be healthy. I like to biohack. For us, the way we think about healthy homes as a builder, now remember, we're a builder. We're just one piece of the team here. We focus a lot on the enclosure, the waterproofing, the 4 control layers, and the mechanicals. So to us, building a healthy home means we're going to build the home, or hopefully we're going to work with an architecture team, an interior design team, and a healthy home consultant that are all working towards giving us a structure that's healthier. It allows us to not make as many mistakes. Like, you see some of these roofs that are super cut up. You can have a lot of errors in building through those things. So we work with the architects and engineers to try to put well-designed, thought-out structures together. We work with the interior designer to make sure that we're making healthy home selections. But our focus where we contribute is making sure that those little details, like when window waterproofing, rain screens. Those things are put into the build. They're installed correctly. They're done properly. That's where we really contribute. Where we don't contribute is with material selection. That's where we would partner with someone like you or a healthy home consultant that comes in and says, rather than using traditional drywall, you should use this drywall. That's a little bit about what we do and what we don't do.
Yeah. And you were mentioning before we went live on the call today, just that, you've taken some mold inspection and remediation courses. So you have like a really well-rounded baseline knowledge of that. And I think one of the cool things too, as a builder who gets that and understands the health aspect, is not only are you able to provide your input during the design, but like you're probably, and I think I've seen you too on your Instagram, performing those third-party tests to verify that these things are actually getting built the way that they're designed.
Yes. As a builder in the field, we hear from a lot of people, I've been installing this window this way for 20 years and we've never had a problem. So I joke with a lot of my subs, especially when I'm interviewing new subs, no one's ever had a problem. And we know that every day there's a new construction defect claiming the state of Florida. But if you ask subcontractors, everyone's been doing it 20, 30 years and nobody's ever had a failure. So clearly there's a disconnect. We don't know, is it homeowners that are just not calling the subs back? They're not calling the builders back. Maybe those subs go out of business and those tradesmen go work for another company, start making those same mistakes there. We don't know. But what we do know is that if we test it, that's the best chance we have of making sure there aren't issues. So we like to say we're chasing zero. We've never built a perfect house. We probably will never build a perfect house. But if we can get incrementally better, that's why we say if you're not testing, you're guessing.
Yeah.
A lot of what we spend our time on is what can we measure? How can we measure it? What's the appropriate device or metric in which to measure? Why is that measurement important? And that's to us the general that we feel in general contract. I'm not an electrician. I know a lot about electrical, but I'm not an electrician. I'm not the specialist, but I'm the guy who's supposed to tie them together and make sure that there's checks and balances in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what building science is, right? Like we're always practicing building science and you're just collecting data, measuring it and testing it with each project. There's no perfect house. It's just how can we try to do the best we can with the data we have and the tools we have to assess the issues.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is always an interesting question, I ask a lot of people, trade professionals and non-trade professionals, what do you think makes a good builder? Or what do you think makes a good contractor? And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it. But
you want to hear them, I'll tell you.
Yeah, common answers I get are, and they're not wrong, are people who have great communication. So if I ask like, hey, what makes a really good builder? Builder needs to have great communication. That to me defines a good builder. Another guy will say somebody who has great organization within their processes. So maybe has Builder Trend or some sort of software and they keep up with it. That keeps things organized and neat. That's kind of another form of communication. Another person says project management, the ability to keep it on schedule and on budget. I've never asked that question and had anybody ever answer and go technical knowledge. It's never happened. But when we talk to people like building forensic investigators, forensic architects, engineers, or a lot of the guys that test our envelopes and things throughout, they go, oh man, these builders don't know what the hell they're doing. And you're like, well, yeah, when people think of what makes a builder a good builder, it's not technical knowledge. So they can be a great builder by the metrics that we've established a builder should be good by. So if we're not changing the narrative to say like, hey, what makes a good builder is somebody who has technical knowledge in waterproofing and the control layers and these things, then they're not bad builders. They're just not meeting the niche that you and I both agree they should be meeting, right?
That's interesting because historically, some of these really bad builders are just really poor communicators. I like when a builder is just curious and open to learn, because I feel like most of the builders that I work with that have been pretty bad builders, just, I don't want to say bad builders. They just don't.
You can say bad builders. I call builders bad builders all the time.
Well, they don't know what they don't know. You know what I mean? And when somebody doesn't know what they don't know and they're not willing to learn, that to me is a bad builder, because I like to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. Like no one, you're not going to know until you know. But once you are aware of a problem, if you have the capacity to learn and change and grow out of regard for that problem, then I think that makes you a good builder. But you're totally right. A builder that also has the technical experience is going to be great. But typically on projects where that isn't the case, we're bringing in like an envelope consultant who is being that technical person, right? So you either need a builder to have that or you need someone on your team to have that.
And that was one of the most challenging things I found when we started going into this space. A little bit how we got into this space, right? When we were first remodeling old homes, you'd be shocked at what we discovered. And you'd be shocked on both ends of the spectrum. On one end, we remodeled a bunch of 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s homes, not a lot of 80s and 90s homes. homes. Back then, they built to an incredibly low standard. I mean, there were times where we would take windows out and open up the plaster and there'd be no headers holding it up. We're like, how is this structure even held up? And guess what? We live in a hurricane zone. So they're there 100 years without a header. Where these days, if you didn't put a header in above a window, people would think that's the end of the world. This house is going to collapse. It's unsafe. And they're right. But somehow it happened, right? So in one breath, it kind of gave me a sigh of relief that like, hey, these houses seem to have done okay. But in the other breath, then you start to see really silly things that people did wrong or people let go wrong. And you see the effect of, hey, this is a tiny little bitty leak. I've seen that tub leak in that crawl space and it's one drop every 3 days. But then you see the accumulation of all of that very small little bits over time and how much it can wreak havoc on a space. And then you're scared again. Then you go back to being frightened about like, wow, every little tiny detail we do has a massive effect over the long term. Bulk water is something that we all know shouldn't be in our houses. We all know that if it's raining inside of our home, that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
But that's oftentimes not what we're chasing. What we're chasing is the slow burn, the vapor that didn't evacuate the space because it wasn't allowed to, or the materials that weren't fully cured when they were installed in the home and weren't allowed to dry out, or areas that are hitting dew point because the thermal barrier and air barrier weren't properly installed continuously. Your home's not going to collapse tomorrow because that happened. But 5 years from now, you'll be gutting it. You learn a lot from pulling these old houses apart.
Yeah.
And sometimes it makes you think like the things we thought matter don't really matter as much as we thought. It's the other things that we're not paying attention to that matter.
Yeah. We both know that building to code is the bare minimum, but what does the average code built home look like for you in Tampa? I want to paint the picture for people. Also share what your climate zone is and what the average code built home looks like. And then what are things that you guys are doing differently to go above that?
Great question. I'm going to be pretty long-winded with this answer because I'm going to tell you first about Florida and building in Florida and Florida building code. So we are in Tampa, Florida. We are in a high wind zone area and we are zone 2, pretty aggressive, high humid climate. For those of you who don't know about Florida, we have Florida building code. It is the most strict building code in the country. And in order to get a builder's license, there's 3 levels of builder's license, but even to get the most junior level of builder's license is 3 exams. You have to have 4 years of experience or a college equivalent on a job site as a superintendent or project manager in a leadership role. And you have to take 3 exams. Those exams are open book, but there's like 18 textbooks.
Wow.
And you walk in and these exams are anywhere from 4 to 6 hours apiece. So it's a pretty significant failure rate. It's not easy to get a builder's license in Florida at all. Now, that being said, I think that's a very misleading representation of what it takes to build in Florida. So people think, oh, we have super strict building code. Consumers and builders both think, oh, I'm passing code. We have the most strict code in town or in the country. Well, when you look a little bit deeper into what's in the building code, what they're tracking and what they're actually inspecting and enforcing, you start to see a totally different picture. An example would be after Hurricane Andrew in the 90s, that's when Florida building code was first enacted. And it was really intended to keep roofs from flying off homes and then collapsing in hurricanes. They wanted to make sure things were strapped down. So from a wind perspective, we're tight. We build actually fortified. Fortified is based out of Tampa, Florida. We don't get insurance discounts for fortified in Florida because everything we build is almost fortified. So our building code is this far away from fortified. In fact, we started building fortified houses and didn't change any of our practices. One day we were fortified, one day we weren't, doing the same thing. So Florida building code is great from that perspective. What it's not great at is establishing strong minimums within the envelope. For instance, our ACH leakage score, which is significantly higher than most of the country, right? You guys in Colorado are 3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know anybody here that voluntarily builds to a 3.
And you have also high humidity.
Right. Everybody here goes, oh, well, I'm at a 5 or I put spray foam in and I got to a 3. And you're like, wait a minute. If you have spray foam in a 3, that's a leaky house for spray foam, right?
Yeah.
So waterproofing around the windows. Florida building code demonstrates, says you have for a liquid fluid applied membrane, you have to have a pan that goes 6 inches up the block. It doesn't say you have to go all the way around. It doesn't talk about head flashing. It specifies, hey, it has to be AMA 714 approved for it to be considered a liquid membrane that works as a pan and a sill. I do a little bit of waterproofing consulting on the side, and I can't tell you how many houses, big houses, $5-10 million waterfront houses aren't using AMA 714 approved liquid flashing membranes. Well, it's because that's not an inspection item. The municipalities aren't inspecting it. Florida building code is thousands and thousands and thousands of pages. There's no way that an inspector is inspecting all of it. Stucco, the city of Tampa doesn't even inspect stucco anymore.
Wow.
They used to inspect, when I started started building, they only inspect the wire lath. So if you're putting stucco on block, wasn't an inspection. If you were installing stucco over frame and you need a wire lath, they were inspecting the nailing pattern on the wire lath to make sure it was properly fastened to the building. So what happens is people think, oh, you have a stucco inspection. Oh, you have a window inspection. Oh, you have a framing inspection. There's a checks and balances happening. But when you really look at the details, the inspectors aren't asking you what product you used, or they didn't measure the mill thickness to make sure it was applied to the right thickness. They're looking at the window screw pattern and making sure that this hurricane impact window that requires a 3-inch screw every 3 inches or 4 inches has a 3-inch screw every 3 or 4 inches. So it's more of a life safety thing, right? Which is great. Like Florida building code has its place. It's ridiculously hard to get a license. It's ridiculously hard to get a permit. And then people fail inspections constantly. My hot take in Florida is that people think they're being taken care of because we have all these checks and balances, when I think really the checks and balances, they don't mean anything. They don't mean shit. Actually, I see this all the time. I just learned about this the other day. Our attic insulation minimum is R38 blown or an R20 equivalent with spray foam. Now, you and I both know that an R rating is an R rating. An R20 is not an equivalent of an R38. But when you dive deeper into the bill that was approved that made it into Florida building code, they talk about the R20 getting a credit because of its air tightness. So it's actually supposed to be spray foam R20 with a ACH 50 of 3.0 or below. I know builders. I myself, when I was first building my first houses, was putting in R20 and blowing a 5.0 because I didn't know how to air seal properly and never failed an inspection. I'm putting in the lower R value, but I'm not getting that credit for the air tightness I'm supposed to have, right? I'm creating a bigger problem than really would have had if I had just put the pink fluffy stuff in, and inspectors aren't checking it. Well, why? Well, because the edict is R38 or R20 equivalent. The blower door is done at the very, very end in Florida. That's the last thing we do here. It's the last thing you do.
Yeah.
So that's my rant about Florida and building in Florida.
But not you. That was a great explanation of code. Now, how are you guys doing it differently? Because I feel like I've seen
great question.
Some things that you're doing. And are you using spray foam on every project?
We sometimes it depends on the client. Our goal is not to, but sometimes it's the easiest or most affordable way to go. And if the client doesn't have an objection to it, we need it for budget reasons. Is while spray foam was thought of as a premium upgrade, it is not a premium upgrade when you compare it to, exterior insulation with rock wool and all the other stuff, right? It's actually pretty considerably cheaper. So what are the things we're doing? I think one of the lowest hanging fruit things that we do that is the most impactful is we do our blower door assisted air sealing. We test those multiple times throughout the building process, but very early in the building process. I'm not a physicist. I'm sure that there's some smarter guys than me who will maybe tell me I'm thinking about this wrong, but most of my peers test the envelope when it's completed, when it's finished. And a lot of that is because when you have baseboards on and drywall on, you're going to have additional resistance that's going to help you get that ACH 50 score down. It's going to make it look better. But the reality is, if we have an unvented attic, we want our air barrier to be at the outermost pressure boundary. We don't want to seal it from the inside. We don't want that interstitial space behind the drywall. So measuring it after the drywall to me is useless. It's a useless metric. It doesn't make any sense. So we actually test now before insulation. We think about the 4 control layers. We've got our air barrier in. We've got our thermal barrier in. Let's test it now. And then we have an internal metric for what we like to hit with that. Now, while we're doing that, we're also testing windows. We're also testing doors. We're testing all the envelope, and we're seeing where those leaks coming from, because not all leaks are created equal. So I'll be the first one to tell you, we are not an ACH 50 number chasing company. I don't care. Whether I get a 0.9 or a 1.2, it doesn't make a difference to me. What matters to me is where's that airflow coming from. On a lot of homes that we build, we have to put budget window packages in. A standard impact window in Florida is 2 or 3 times the cost of a standard window in other markets. Our cheapest window is already much more expensive than what most other people are spending on windows. So if the window is a little leaky, the window's a little leaky. It is what it is. There's only so much you can do about that. If the attic is leaky, that is a problem, especially those interstitial spaces that are semi-conditioned, where we want to really control the heat load that's coming into those spaces. So we walk around with smoke pins. We walk around with water hoses on the outside. We walk around with light. We do everything we can to inspect our air barrier and our thermal barrier. And then we install the insulation, because the insulation will add another layer that prevents it. So those are some of the things that we're doing. Obviously, we have pretty extensive waterproofing details and rain screen details. We can get into that if you want, but I would say that's probably the easiest thing that we do that other builders could do that it's just not coming. It's like, you're going to do the blower door anyways. Just do it now instead of then and get real meaningful data from it.
Exactly. I have that on my list for all my clients. Like, we should be doing the blower door at this point, because how else? There's just no other test that I know of that can help identify where those leaks are at that point, because you have so much opportunity to resolve those issues right then and there with just a little extra effort. So I love that you guys are doing that as a standard.
Yeah, it's a great way to get an idea of how your mechanicals are going to perform. An example, we build houses from 500 square feet to 5,000 square feet, and from our new entry level price point, like 650,000 up to $5 million. And so very different budgets, very different sophistications of homes. But if it's a small home, and our ACH 50 is 2.5, but we know that that's 500 CFM. We know we're going to have a problem with that exhaust fan. We know we're going to have a problem with that stove exhaust. So we need to, hey, make sure that we're matching the makeup air. That might matter more than if you have a 8,000 square foot home whose ACH 50 is 1, but that's 3,000 CFM of airflow. Well, 3,000 CFM of airflow, putting in a bath fan that takes out 150 CFM, it's not a problem that we need to fix, right?
Yeah.
So having that data early on while your mechanicals are open allows you to pivot and go, hey, wait a minute, this is a little bit tighter than we thought. There's a little bit less airflow than we thought. We didn't have a makeup air solution for that washer dryer. Let's add it now.
Yeah.
So we don't get 6 months into occupancy and then go, shit, we need, we need to add some makeup air to this. How do we do that?
That dryer ends up being an issue a lot of times, because I feel like the homes are getting tighter and then no one thinks about the dryer till the end. And then they're like, oh, where are we going to put this makeup air?
Right.
Like, where do you
you're
put
digging
it?
into attics. You're digging into drywall. And the occupants don't know why. They move in and they're going, man, my clothes at the last, I never had a problem with this dryer. Let me throw the dryer away because it's just not drying my clothes anymore. Yeah, I feel like just getting that data early on while everything's open, it's the best way to go. It's the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
Another thing is just not putting mechanicals in unconditioned space, I should say. If you've got a vented attic, don't put mechanicals up there. That will solve 80% of your problems.
Yeah. And just think about where the mechanicals are going to go when you're doing your layout at all. I mean, I have homes I'm working on that I get pulled into late in the game. They're $7 million, $8 million homes. There's no mechanical room. And then you're trying to squeeze it all in.
I think almost every podcast episode of yours I've listened to, somebody has talked about that, right? Somebody's like, hey, plan for the mechanicals, plan for that. I feel like this is a red glaring sign. Everybody agrees, plan for the mechanicals.
If you take one thing away.
Still, nobody plans for the mechanicals. Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So the truth is, nobody wants to get the square footage up. You're building a 1,500 square foot home, 2,500 square foot home. People want 4 beds, 3 baths. That's hard to fit into that footprint to begin with. You don't want to take 75 square feet out to put a nice mechanical closet in.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
But, too bad. You got to do it. It's just,
you got to do it.
That's like saying, I want to buy the car, but I don't want the wheels. And it's like,
you
what
need
are you
it.
You got to have it.
It's not a want.
We have to quit giving the option. We just tell people, you need a mechanical closet. Oh, well, do I have to have one? Yes, you have to have one. And then we move on to the next conversation.
No, absolutely. Well, I mean, you guys are just doing this standard. So like, you're working with an architect who's doing a design and you're just following their design, or are you doing like design build stuff too?
Yeah, design build stuff. The last couple of years, we've done a few projects where people have brought us plans. We no longer do that. Earlier this year, we decided we are only full design build. If we're not involved in the pre-construction phase, we will not build your house. And that's just it. So we build both spec homes that we call custom specs, where obviously we're the client dealing with architects. And then we work with, clients sometimes bring an architect to the deal and say, hey, we like this person, we want to use them. And we're fine with that if we interview them and we feel like they're savvy.
Yeah.
But if we're not involved in the planning, we don't want to be held to higher standards of execution if we weren't allowed to be in the planning. That's just how we think of it. It's easy for me to be picky because we're a small company. So I don't need to build 50 houses a year. If that turns customers off, then there's somebody else who will build your house for you.
Yeah. The most successful projects are the ones where the builder is involved super early on. Like, don't even start designing until you can talk to the builder in your market and understand what you're thinking about, what designing is going to fit in your budget and the goals and what are the limitations. I mean, I just think like an integrative approach is so much more successful anyways. So, I like that you guys are kind of just saying no to anything other than that.
Yeah. I mean, I'll let you know how it goes, right? If in 18 months I don't have any work because everybody, then maybe I'll change. Look, I reserve the right to change my mind. Every day we're learning, every day we're growing. That the way we're doing things today was different than how we were doing in 6 months, different than 6 months before that. So as of now, that's the posture we've taken. Let me tell you something. So I'm the first one to criticize other builders and other contractors, okay? Because there's a lot that our industry doesn't do well. And when you really take a peek behind the curtain, you realize it's because they're not incentivized to do well. And an example of that is project planning. So we charge a decent amount for pre-construction because we intend to put a lot of time into that. And so sometimes we'll get pushback from a client who says, man, this person over here doesn't charge for pre-construction, or this person takes it out of their feet. And we go, well, I understand that. But if you want us to properly plan your project and make sure every detail is thought about before we have a signed agreement and the shovels in the ground, we need to be compensated for that time. A lot of people are afraid to ask for that. And so what happens is they don't want to do work for free. So you end up getting a back of the napkin budget. You end up getting, oh, well, this is roughly what we pay for these things on other equal projects. It's like, if it's a custom home, how are you comparing it to other equal projects? Right? That's not a custom home. That's a semi-custom home, which are great homes. Semi-custom homes are fine. Don't call yourself a custom home builder and say other projects just like this ended up at this price, or do so very loosely. You better have a big range on that, right? So you got to charge for it. You have to make sure you set the hours aside. I mean, that's part of my daily office hours, pre-construction on people's projects, where we're thinking about it and looking through the plans detailed. The big benefit to the homeowners is that when you look at the overall scope and cost, not the material and labor, not what you're paying the GC, but if you're moving out of the house to remodel it, or if you're paying 2 mortgages because you're building a custom home, or, whatever, the cost of having a delay of construction during construction is exponentially more than spending a little bit of money and a little bit of time on pre-construction. And when we say exponentially more, let's break that down. There's the physical cost, right? There's the dollars and cents, but there's also the moral cost. When you get a subcontractor on site and you've got the greatest tile guy who does the greatest waterproofing in your market, and you get done with waterproofing, and then all of a sudden the homeowner can't pick their mind on tile, that guy's got a list of other projects to go to, because if they're good at what they do, they're in high demand. And if you're not ready to go when they're ready to go, they're going to roll you. And if they roll you, that messes up with your schedule. Now I'm having to call the next sub behind them and say, hey man, I said we'd be done now, but I got to kick you out 2 weeks because he got busy on something else. And it has this stratification effect that delays projects, and trades don't like that. That doesn't work. You don't make friends by messing everyone's schedule up. We're in the construction industry. That happens. It's going to happen no matter what. If we're able to plan really, really well in the beginning and minimize those, it's not just going to save you physical dollars and cents. You're going to have a trade base that's happier to be at your job, working, going to ideally do a better job. You're going to call in a favor. You might move in the house 6 months from now. You might have a little dried out crack line in your grout, and that trade's going to be happy to come back and fix it for you because you were such a great client to work with. If you drag that trade's 2-week project out for 2 months, he's going to go, I don't want to go back. And these people, every time they call me, there's a problem, there's another problem, right? That makes it hard to conduct the business. So planning saves the entire project. I don't understand how people have done it all this time without.
Me either. I was just going to say, okay, if you guys take one thing away from this podcast, I think I talk about on every single episode, it's HVAC, importance of finding a place for the mechanicals, and planning. I talk about this all the time. Everyone's like, yeah, whatever. But no one's planning properly. People are still waiting to the last minute to find their finishes, still waiting to the last minute to do these things that should have been decided on early on. I also come from the commercial world where those things are done early on. So for me, I'm like, what is going on? Why hasn't anyone made any decisions yet? Because, it starts to get late in the game. And then you have everything you just talked about, Scott, but then also the other issue that I see costing people more money is you're not planning it now. Things go wrong during construction. Now you end up in litigation. That is not somewhere anyone wants to be. It's laborious, it's time intensive, it's expensive, it's stressful. I mean, you pay a little more up front for someone like you to get organized on the front end so that disorganization and chaos doesn't wind you up in a lawsuit later down the road too.
Exactly. I love talking to my clients about the details. I can't tell you how much of a grumpy builder I am when I'm sitting there trying to schedule, and we're in the rainy season right now. It rains every day. I'm sitting there trying to deal with opening the house up and closing it. We've got a small window and someone's going, well, should the tile be laid this way or that way? Or should this be 30 inches or 36 inches? And you're like, now's not the time. I'm here. I've got 6 guys with tool belts on waiting for you to make this decision so we can get moving. And it's about to start pouring down on my job site. And you know who's ultimately responsible for that? That's me. I got to make sure that this is done. So, I become a little bit of a grumpy person on the job site sometimes. I don't like being that, right? Because, hey, guys, We got to move these things along, right?
Yeah.
To homeowners, every decision is the end of the world, and rightfully so, because there's a million decisions to make when building a house.
Yeah.
And for healthy homes, that's times 10. And every decision can seem like, oh, what's the toxicity of this material? What's the off-gassing of this material?
Yeah.
Mixed with durability, right? Well, this one doesn't off-gas as much, but it's not as durable, right? There's so many decisions to make. If you fail to plan those, your builder, your subs, everybody's going to be driven crazy by the project, and it's going to be an exhausting process. And that's what you don't want. So just plan it. Just take an extra 2 months, 3 months, plan out an extra. I'm not saying it only takes 2 or 3 months. I was saying it takes 2 or 3 months longer than a regular builder's planning.
Yeah. I wonder about this because it's like when you're presented with this one decision, like, what do you want to do for this? It does seem like that is the most important decision, but in reality, the homeowner's likely not even going to notice like the difference between this or that. But it just seems so important because it's like they're staring at that one decision and it feels like the end of the world. But I think that's the hardest part is, making those decisions and who do you trust to lean on for guidance on whether you should make that decision or not, or what's the right decision? It's hard. And that's why I always say, like, educate yourself early, way sooner than you ever even need to going into a renovation or new build. Have a little bit of a foundation so that when you go into that process, you feel a little bit more informed because there's going to be hundreds of thousands of decisions to make.
Yeah. I love building homes. It's a passion of mine. I actually have a degree in finance, right? I worked in finance and risk management for almost a decade before I came into the building world. And so I saw builders get sued. I saw the type of claims that came up. I saw what happened, which is probably part of what piqued my curiosity and wanting to do things better was to say, hey, I want to avoid being that guy. But builders have a really hard job. A lot of the times you're same as interior designers. You're stuck between a husband and wife, possibly making 2 different decisions. You've got to manage all the personalities of trades who are, going through whatever life is bringing them. You're dealing with weather. You're dealing with regulatory issues. You're dealing with local governments that don't want to issue permits or want to hold your permit up for something, silly. You're like, why can't I hang my drywall because my sidewalk is not compliant? What do those have to do with each other, right? So it's a frustrating process on its best day. And if we have an opportunity to plan some of those things out, why not? We talk about building healthy homes. What about the stress load on our body? Let's talk about that. My doctor goes, you can paint your whole house with non-toxic paint. That's not what's going to get you, Scott. It's the heart attack. It's the stress from you every day, right?
Amen.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about making the home building process healthier, right?
Yes. There's
a tagline for you.
Yes. Yeah. That's why I end every conversation on a little note about how we can try to help our nervous systems. Well, I love that you brought that up though, because this is you building a custom home for somebody, but you're also an investor where you're the client. So for you, I'm sure that does take a lot of stress knowing, okay, there's probably different stressors in that one, right? Because you're like, who are we building this home for? But I want to talk about some of the things that we've chatted through on Instagram, just going back and forth about some of the different projects you're working on building. And you were sharing like in your area, there was a hurricane. I don't remember which one that knocked out like a neighborhood or something. And you're doing some things to rebuild in a healthy way. Do you want to share more about that?
Yeah. So we had 2 hurricanes, not last year, the year before, Milton and Helene, that wiped out some neighborhoods pretty aggressively. And it wasn't so much the wind as much as it was the water. Storm surge came in and flooded a bunch of homes. Around that time was when we started focusing more on healthy homes. And we were seeing a lot of people do what we thought were like silly fixes, right? So they're like, when we build back, we're going to put PVC baseboard in and we're going to put the bottom 4 feet of our wall, because we do flood cuts where they cut 4 feet of the wall out and replace it. We're going to do the bottom 4 feet of our wall in like a dense glass or something so that, next time it floods, we don't have to clean it out. And you're like, well, yeah, that works if it's clean water that comes in and floods your house. If it's brown water from outside, it doesn't matter what material it gets on. It's got to go. And that's when we started really diving into like, where are these checks and balances important? Like, where does it matter and where does it not? And you can go down the healthy home rabbit hole pretty significantly and really start to slice and dice things very finely. But as a spec home builder and as a developer, we're always working towards the median, unfortunately, right? Because that's the market. I have to buy the land. I have to put a budget together and I have to build a house that's marketable. I was just having this this debate with a friend, a colleague who's in our local BS and beer chapter, great architect. And he was talking about some of the things we should do inside a home. I said, look, we don't have the budget for it. And he goes, yeah, it's going to sell. And I go, well, you have to get them to the house first. You have to spend some money in the vanity of a home first, because if you don't have pretty pictures up, no one's going to get to the house to know how great the natural sunlight is.
Yeah.
Because everybody can Photoshop great sunlight or great light into homes and post pictures of them. Sitting in it is when you feel all the extra windows and all the extra details that you put into it. As developers, we're constantly having to balance when we build these back or either remodeling or building new construction. We're not a company that just spends a bunch of money on finishes. We obviously care about the envelope, but you can't have it all. You can't have the best envelope, the best mechanicals, and the best finishes in town and expect to sell your home. Yeah, sure, you might sell it for 5% more than everybody else, but you spent 20% more doing it, right? And the ROI is not there. So what we've been doing on this, we've got Tampa's first spec healthy home. It's a fairly high price. It's 4,800 square feet heated. It's about almost 9,000 square feet under roof. It's got a big garage, but the first floor is 14 feet off the ground.
Wow.
The floodplain only comes up to 10. So we joke that you could park your car in the garage, first floor is all garage, and pick your car up on the lifts, and your cars will be out of the flood zone, not just your house will be flood zone.
Wow.
Because that happened. This last flood, when this area got flooded, some people's homes were lifted up high enough that they weren't affected, but their cars and their whole garage, people with very nice cars, got flooded. As we're building that, we're thinking, okay, what can we do to make this a healthy home without going bananas? We've so far selected spray foam free. We're doing exterior insulation, and we're doing formaldehyde-free rock wool throughout the rest of the home. We have decided on a better lighting package. We haven't decided which lighting package yet, but to give you an idea, there's 6 houses adjacent to us being built. The average person within those 6 is spending about $15 to $20 on a can light. And in a house like this, there's probably 80 to 90 can lights. The can lights that we picked were, I think, $550 a piece.
Wow.
So yeah, so it was something like, I don't know, around $100,000 budget for can lights. Well, you can't do that in a spec home. We'd love to, but you can't do it. You gotta make a compromise. So we're going through and we're balancing how can we get EMF protection without spending a ton of money. Even at a $3.5, $4 million price point, you're still constrained by budgets. It's not like just because it's a big number, but yeah. So we start by lifting it off the ground. We're putting in world-class mechanicals. We're putting in great insulation thermal barriers. We're monopoly framing it, which with block is very different.
Can you walk me through what that looks like with block?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's easy to walk through or not.
No, it's not bad. Podcast. So, we don't have as much air leakage with block as you guys do with frame. Okay, let's talk about that with Florida. Nobody on the internet is building high-performance homes with block. There's no YouTube channel to go watch somebody build a high-performance home with block. I've watched so many Matt Reisinger videos and other videos that show me how to build with frame. I could go build a frame house. I've never built a whole frame house. I could do it tomorrow and build a great house, but there's no education for block.
And you're going to be doing the education, I think, right?
Yeah. So we've had to really figure it out. So the biggest leakage point for us is at the soffits.
Yeah.
Because we all use pre-engineered trusses. And so monopoly framing with pre-engineered trusses becomes difficult. If you clip them and you come down with the continuous sheathing and then you bolt your soffit on later and your rafter tails on later, you have an uplift problem. Right?
Interesting. Yeah.
Because we have a huge uplift requirement in code. And we all talk about wanting to have bigger porches and bigger rafter tails and bigger soffits hanging off the side of the house. But the bigger they are, the bigger of a kite you've just built to get blown away. I think there's a guy, it was Scott Green or somebody out of Texas, actually was on the Build Show and talked about it. But it's a monopoly frame that comes down the roof, down the fascia board, under the soffit, and connects with the vertical sheathing on the building. We do that, we just connect it to the block. Okay. So we posted a video on Instagram about it, and then we run our thermal barrier up. We actually insulate the soffit, insulate the fascia board, and then insulate the roof. So we have a continuous thermal air and insulation there.
Do you happen to have a photo of this that you can share? Because I create a YouTube video out of this. It would be super cool to be able to pop some videos in. And
I got a couple, yeah. That particular house, that soffit's about 40 feet in the air. So I have pictures from the ground. I get up there on the scaffolding, but as little as possible.
Wow.
So,
yeah, because it's lifted. Because
the whole first floor is
Walk me through the foundation of a home like this.
It's a big foundation. I mean,
is it block?
Yeah, that home has no wood on the exterior except for the roof. None. There's no bump outs there that are wood. Nothing. It's the whole exterior is block. The chimney, the fireplace, everything is block, except for the roof sheathing. Oftentimes in these areas, because the water table is so high, you're going to end up putting in large pilings. This one had pretty good soil reports. We didn't need pilings, but you've got massive concrete footers underground, 4 feet wide by 18 inches, 2 feet deep for the footings. Then you've got first floor of CMU block. You've got cast in place beams around it. We build our decks out of concrete as well, not We don't do truss decks with wood coatings because why? We're in Florida.
Yeah.
We're near the water.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of concrete that goes into the house. And then you just keep going up, keep stacking block, putting a lintel, stacking block, putting a lintel.
Are you just doing like a waterproofing, like a dimple mat on the exterior? How are you waterproofing? And then what's the siding? Because it's obviously it goes in to the ground and then it's coming up. How are you waterproofing the sides? Trying to understand.
That is a great question.
Yeah.
Those are things that we constantly try to wrap our head around. So one, let's talk about the foundation. Most of the houses in our region are built on stem walls, meaning you're going to get a footer, a wall, you're going to fill those walls in with dirt, and you're going to build an on-grade slab on top of it.
Are you just doing like a rat slab since that's not technically part of the house, or are you waterproofing under that slab?
We're required to put at least a 6 mil poly underneath it as a vapor and water barrier. But here's the thing, they just take it to the edge. So when you're looking at that vertical CMU wall, it comes to the edge, right? It's really a vapor barrier, not a water barrier. And then they're pouring the slab on top.
Yeah.
We have some additional details we've played with before where we turn it down, we install it before the dirt goes in, before our backfill dirt goes in, and pull it over, fill it full of dirt, and then pull our membrane in so that we have a continuous. We've tried taking it from outside the footings, laying it with the footings, and then bringing it up. And then we get some alternative issues with UFR bonds and grounding because a lot of the bonds are into the footing. And if the footing is not in contact with the soil, then there's other. So, there's a lot of trade-offs. We found really good ways to do it. We haven't found the perfect way to do it. Ideally, we'd like to have some sort of capillary break between the foundation and a block, but that's not how it's typically done. What we do is we waterproof the outside of the block unless we're putting stucco on. That's so a lot of people out of town, every time I get someone from out of Florida that goes, hey, I got a project in Florida. What do we do about this block? Well, here's the thing. I love a good rain screen. If we're doing siding, we're rain screening the heck out of that project. I have never found anybody who would say there's a better bond than stucco to block.
Okay. So then how are you preventing that inward drive?
Vapor drive?
So, yeah. I'm just trying to understand, like,
that is a great
if you're
question.
doing stucco, how are we preventing the water from going inward with all the solar drive and water?
That's a great question. Moisture. We've played with vapor open assemblies and just letting it go.
Let it breathe.
Let it breathe. More recently, what we've been doing is putting our vapor barrier on the very outside. So we'll use a coating as a primer that's a vapor impermeable, very thick coating. A lot of times we'll apply 2 or 3 layers of it on the outside of the house, something that has a lot of elasticity to it because the stucco will crack. One thing about putting the stucco to the block is either the block will crack, which will lead to a crack on a stucco, or the stucco will crack. But one of them is going to crack eventually. We spend a lot of money on really good coatings on the outside. That's about the best that we've come up with so far. We talked to Dr. Joe about this. We've talked to Steve Basic about it at summer camp. We've talked to guys about this, and the KISS method seems to be what most people recommend. Putting a barrier between stucco and block is just not a good idea.
Like a rain screen?
Putting a rain screen between stucco and block is not a good idea.
Explain this more.
They're two cementitious materials.
Yeah.
Their greatest bond is going to be together. So the issue with putting stucco on frame is that they're two dissimilar materials and it's a reservoir cladding system, right? Block doesn't deteriorate like frame does when it gets water in it. So you have a reservoir cladding system, and there is a problem with that because there's still capillary action, there's still inward vapor drive. You're still going to get moisture inside the envelope that you're not supposed to have, right? So we know we still need to do something about it. But the question is, spending a ton of money to put a rain screen between two similar materials, is that a good, effective use? Are you getting enough bang for your buck out of it?
Yeah.
We think no. Maybe somebody one day can convince me to. Now, there are cementitious waterproofing additives and systems that can be put into stucco. I think it's TamoSeal or ThoroSeal is one of them. I learned about one actually from Rachel the other day. We were chatting about one that they're using down in Boca. So there are additives and 3-part systems that you can put with your stucco to make the stucco itself waterproof and still adhere it to the block. Those would be considered like very premium upgrades. It's going to double the cost of your stucco assembly, but it's going to include the vapor and water barrier within it. But again, the stucco is still being applied. That's part of the stucco mix. It's a cementitious mix that's being applied directly to the stucco.
Yeah.
So putting like a dimple mat and then putting a lath system over it to stucco on, why? You've just decoupled a potentially extremely strong bond.
That makes sense.
It's definitely an unpopular opinion.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to hear because I feel like everyone has a different opinion on these things. I mean, this just conversation alone just goes to show, right? There's no like real perfect right one way to do anything because you're always going to come up against your own budget, the climate, the availability of the trades to actually install something. Like there's so many factors and things that don't make it easy to do something perfect and repeat that the same way. I mean, every single time, not on a custom house. Maybe on a spec, you can find your way and repeat, but
yeah, let's talk real numbers here for a minute, right? So that house, it's a 4,500 square foot house, which is a big house, but it's not a crazy house.
Yeah.
The build budget for it is pretty substantial. To add, I forget what it's called, ThoroSeal or TamoSeal. Somebody in the comments can correct me. To add that mix to the install was something like $5 to $7 per square foot of wall space. That house has somewhere around 18,000 square feet of wall space. So you're talking about $100,000. That's not an insignificant amount of money.
No.
The question isn't whether that's a better assembly or not. That's a better assembly. We know that's a better assembly. The question is, can that $100,000 be spent elsewhere? And instead, we repaint the house every 5 years for the next 20 years and still don't spend $100,000, right?
Right.
Even if you do that, you still need to repaint your house every so many years to make sure that our outermost coating is protected because Florida sun is unforgiving and Florida salt water is even more unforgiving.
Yeah.
So are you better putting that money in an escrow account and spending it to repaint your house every 5 years? Or are you better putting it in as an additive? These are the decisions we have to make as builders and homeowners when we're guiding our customers.
Well, is stucco the best material to be using in that area or?
I don't like to use stucco. I like siding, but aesthetics, right?
Okay.
If that's the look that you want, there's only one way to get it, and that's stucco.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's something we talk a lot with. We have a really fantastic client right now who's really deep into the healthy home stuff. We're doing a fantastic remodel for her. She has the most lovely trellises and vines growing up on the front of her house, right? Which, as we all know, no go, right? Very bad, right?
Yeah.
And we're being extremely intentional about how we deal with the interior on this home. But at the end of the day, the house looks great with those on it. The house has had those on it for 15, 20 years, and she hasn't had a problem with that. I'm not saying that it's okay to go do that. But what I'm saying is, if that brightens up your life every time you pull into your driveway and you love it, maybe we focus on something else. Maybe that's just something you live with, right? You know what else isn't good for you? Cookies and ice cream. You know what my favorite dessert is? Cookies and ice cream. Okay. So at some point, you just got to say, what's it worth?
Yeah. Choose your risk. It's all about informed consent. If you ask
informed. I love that. Informed consent.
We should be informed of the risks and we should be able to decide whether we want to take them. It's whenever we aren't informed of the risks and then shit happens. And then we're like, well, how did this happen? No one told me that this could possibly pose a risk, or I would have said no. Exactly. But someone also might say, but I love these vines so much. So I was willing to take the risk.
Yep.
And in fact, I had a client in Florida who had the vines and she was like, I know the risk. I still want the vines. And actually one of the nailer, like the pins, because what's the name?
One of the fasteners that was holding
fasteners for like the clear or wire or whatever that was holding the vines up on the wall actually did cause a leak.
Oh, wow. And then you were like, hey.
Yeah. We figured it out and it was all resolved. It was fine. But she loved the vines and she wanted the vines. As long as you know the risks and you have a choice to say, like, I know the risk of eating cookies, whatever, ice cream every single night, and I can choose to take it if I want.
What gets unfortunate is obviously like you have a lot of customers and we're starting to get more customers that have autoimmune diseases and sensitivities. And a lot of those folks, unfortunately, don't get a choice, right? And that's where we come in and we say, hey, we're going to help navigate the envelope and the mechanicals and the architecture and make sure that the home is being built in a safe way and being built the best it can be. But you really need to consult with someone that's a materials specialist. I tell people when they ask me, like, what would you do? What would you? And I go, don't ask me, because I, fortunately, as of now, am not a sensitive person to some of these things. So I don't have as much of an emotional feeling about them, right? Where like someone who's had major skin issues because of an autoimmune disease, they're going to be very aggressive about don't ever do this, right? And that's why I think it's so important that we decouple that process. Is like me as a builder, if a client comes to me and says, hey, I don't want to use drywall anywhere in the house, that could double your drywall bill. Well, let's just play pretend that I'm a cost plus builder. I just make twice as much money on one trade. So if I go to the homeowner and I say, look, you shouldn't use drywall because drywall is paper, it has toxicity and it grows mold, all these issues. Even if they trust me, even if they believe in me, there's always in the back of their subconscious, this guy's getting paid by upselling me, right?
Yeah.
When we work with someone like yourself who specs those materials, then you have no interest in those selections.
Yeah.
And we find that people need help navigating those because there's so many decisions.
Right.
And so it's like, hey, can I advise you? Absolutely. Can I answer your questions? Sure. But don't hear it from me. Take it from somebody else who's an uninterested party, and they'll tell me what to do and I'll go do it. Right.
That's a really interesting perspective, and you're right, because you're already being held liable for so much.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
And to add that additional layer onto it is just like an extra layer of stress on everyone. And if you don't
Uh-huh.
get something right, and then the client's blaming you, and I think it is really good to have that third party. And that's say this on every podcast episode too, but like building is a team sport.
Uh-huh.
Bring someone in to look at EMF, bring someone in to look at healthy. Don't rely on just one person to know everything, because the truth is there's no one person who knows everything. There just isn't.
Yeah.
Like, bring those people in for small consults here and there on various things. And like, so much magic can happen when you put multiple minds together. Like back in ancient times, we were building structures with huge groups of people. And now we're like, okay, builder, do it. Get it all done, know everything. I feel like we're like leaning very heavily on our builders to know and do everything. And I think that that's also part of the problem too. And education is needed on the consumer's end to know that your builder isn't going to know everything. Even if you are an amazing builder, we can't rely on any one person to know it all.
Sure, exactly. And, a lot of times, like you have to remember, we go back to what we talked about earlier, what makes a good builder. My primary responsibility is to build the structure on time and on budget. And so when somebody asks me about an alternative material, I'm intrigued. I want to go down that rabbit hole. I'll go spend 3 weeks learning about it, calling around to see where do you source it from, who installs it, what's been the issues with the install before, and learning how to do this stuff. But if I'm doing that, then I'm not ordering your flooring for your house because I'm busy doing that. Those are hours I'm not charging for either, right? Because you asked me to spec one material, but you didn't realize what you really asked me to do was go compare and contrast 20 materials and pick one. That's a large scope. So we're very comfortable in the space that we're in. We waterproof windows very well. I'm very confident about how we waterproof them. Most of the healthy home consultants that we've worked with spec the same envelope stuff that we're already doing. So we're comfortable with that. Let us run with that. You guys spec the glues for the floors, or you guys spec the caulks or sealants or coatings, or the means and methods. And then, then I go learn how to install it. And that's what makes it, you said it best, a team sport. It's what makes it successful.
Yeah. So speaking of a team sport, I want to try to switch gears a little bit, because you are the head of your BS and Beer in your local area, correct?
I am. Yep.
I would love to know, like, what are some of the conversations that have been happening in your BS and Beer community groups? What are some of the topics people are talking about most in your local region?
Our BS Beer group's fairly small and fairly new. So a lot of the people that go are people that I already work with, because they're like, why does Scott make us do this? Or they're trades I use, like the people that are testing the building. Those people are already intrinsically interested. So a lot of those are around project successes and failures. We've had some really interesting architects come in and talk about things that they do in other countries or other regions of the world that we do differently here for how they solve some of our same problems. Recently, we've been talking a lot about HVAC. Probably gonna have a summer series starting next month about mold and HVAC, because that's such a significant portion. But yeah, really enclosure. The common debate here is, are we building buildings too tight? Most of us are in the camp that you can't build a building too tight, right? But there's still a lot of people who think you can, right? And most of those people are well-intended, practical individuals, whatever, who are saying, yeah, okay, sure, I could build a building tight, but if I 4X my HVAC budget, was it worth it? So yeah, a lot of what we talk about here right now, and a lot of what's on my mind is HVAC.
Yeah. It kind of comes down to HVAC. I mean, envelope and HVAC.
It's a really big deal. It's a really big deal. So let me give you some perspective on HVAC, okay? I've been thinking a lot about this recently.
Tell me.
I live in a decent neighborhood. I would say our average new construction home price here probably goes anywhere from $550,000 on the low end to maybe $1 million on the high end. Probably $900,000 on the high end. My primary HVAC company that works with me also works for most of the other builders in the area. The average, let's use a 2,500 square foot 2-story home. That's what I live in. The average 2,500 square foot 2-story home is in my neighborhood is getting one single stage unit. Maybe it's getting two zones, upstairs and downstairs. If it's a single story home, they're probably spending $9,000 to $10,000 to get this for the whole house set up. Okay, that's a spec builder. Everybody that builds in my neighborhood is spec. There's nobody really building custom. We would build if we used one zone, two systems. Like if you're going good, better, builder grade code is 9, 10, maybe 12,000. If you put in a little bit better equipment and a dehumidifier, you might be in that $15,000 range. Our typical build would cost us like between 25 and 30,000, and that's on a single unit. Now, if we split into two units, which we prefer to do when we can, it's not quite double, but it's pretty close to it. So you very quickly go from an average home builder putting a decent system in at $12,000 to $60,000 for the same square footage of home, right?
Yeah.
And that's a significant difference. Now, what are you getting for that $60,000? Well, if you didn't build the envelope right, nothing. It doesn't matter. But typically the people who want all those things are already building the envelope right. We hope, right? Because if you don't build the envelope right, we just ripped a 4-ton, super expensive, super nice train unit out and went back with two 2-ton, super expensive, super nice train units. We went 4-ton for 4-ton. The problem wasn't the HVAC unit. The problem was the envelope. But the HVAC unit had so much mold in it, it had to all get thrown away. And we realized we could control the loads better with two systems rather than one. So we went back with two instead of one, right? It was just a better way. That home is unique, has a lot of unique properties. I went back with it. But at the end of the day, like it had a variable speed, it had a dehumidifier, it had spray foam, it had all the bells and whistles. And it wasn't a sizing problem. It wasn't because it was too big. Most of the time it's a sizing problem. We all know that.
Yeah.
Not in this case. It was an envelope problem. And it didn't matter what you did. You could have put 5 dehumidifiers in that house. It wouldn't have mattered.
Right.
A giant hole is a giant hole. And guess what? This is a waterfront home in Tampa Bay. What are you going to do? Salt water is just leaking into your house. You know, I don't know how many gallons of salt water
too. Just like,
yeah. I mean, there's just nothing you could have done about it, right? You know, people are like fixing, let's do metal ducts. You know what salt water does to metal ducts? It's not pretty, right?
No.
So anyways, I digress. But my point is the HVAC conundrum is what I call it, right? It's like the way we think about it and the way I encourage people to think about it is like, are you a car enthusiast by chance?
No, but my husband's into that. So maybe I might know your reference.
So if you ask a car enthusiast, like what's better, a Camry or a BMW?
BMW, right?
Well, most like engineer-minded people or car enthusiast people are going to go BMWs, right? Because they're like a machine, German engineered, very well designed, right? Now go change the oil in a BMW versus a Camry.
Be more
I've never changed the oil in either, but I'm told that a Camry, you just unscrew, drop the oil. It's very simple. BMW, you're like removing parts to get to the oil plug. It's a whole deal, right? So which one's better?
Depends on what you want to do and are willing to do.
How you define better, right?
Yeah.
So the Camry is going to last you 300,000 miles trucking down the road and doesn't require premium gas. The BMW is a pain in the butt. You got to service it. Every time you service, it's expensive and it uses premium gas. It's more expensive to run. If you can afford that and you enjoy that performance, then a BMW is better for you. What about a Formula One car, right? Formula One car, the slightest little tick in airflow can slow seconds down. I mean, those things are engineered meticulously in ways that production cars on the road could never even dream about, right? So we all know that engineering for a Formula One car is just different, next level. I would never drive a Formula One car down the road. Nobody would. You'd be crazy to. When we look at like engineering of HVAC systems, I probably use 4 or 5 different designers around town. And on any given project, they'll argue over who's ranking. Oh, that guy's crazy. He's done it completely wrong. And this guy's crazy. And we're doing a system right now. He's a fantastic engineer. He's extremely smart. He's very well respected in the field. Everything that I've ever learned about HVAC, this guy pretty much doesn't do it. Not everything, but probably the most important 20% I've learned, like the 80% we're all doing, but the most important 20% I've learned, he's like, you don't need that. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't do this. I'm going, dude, this is a really important job. I want the belt and suspenders. I want everything. Yeah. And he's like, I'm giving you that. He's like not putting returns in the bedrooms. And I'm like, why aren't you putting returns in the bedrooms? Right? Now, he has jumper ducts. The air can be moved, evacuated out of the space. And then when you spend hours and hours going through the engineering with it, you understand his deep knowledge of airflow and you understand how and why the things are supposed to work the way that they are. And I don't think he's wrong. But I sent it to 2 other guys to peer review and they were like, don't install that. That's crazy. That's not going to work.
This is the hardest part about home building in general, but healthy home building and high performance home building is that very well respected, knowledgeable people have different opinions on things. And then you're like, what is the right thing?
My first building science symposium I ever went to was in Naples 2 years ago. Andy Osk, extremely well-respected guy. That room was full of Stebrick was there, Straub was there, everybody was there. I watched people who were part of who invented dehumidifiers sit on stage with people who design and build dehumidifiers and install them and argue about the right way to dehumidify. And I learned that when it comes to engineers, there's more than one way to do it. There's pros and cons and there's trade-offs. You're always going to have a trade-off. And it's our job to understand the client's desire and understand which trade-off is best.
Yeah.
A classic example I'll give you. Here's one that most people don't think about. Let's say we build a super tight house. It's fantastic. Let's say we've got 2 variable speed systems in, we've got makeup air, and we've got dehumidification. We've got fresh air coming in 40 minutes every hour. Indoor air quality is fantastic. The power goes out. Now what? You got hot, stale air. You know when the power goes out in Florida? When there's a hurricane outside. You know what the outdoor conditions are like when the hurricane is going on? Yeah, you don't want to open the windows. Let's say the hurricane's passed. Our power was out here for 8 days on the last hurricane. Power's out, so it's beautiful. Hurricane's passed. You open the windows. You know what the humidity level is like outside? Your home will blossom with mold in 8 days that the power's down. So now you got to put a generator in to make sure your power doesn't go out. And you better make sure that generator is big enough to support all that HVAC equipment that you just put in. And just because you made the house tighter and you went from a 4-ton unit to a 2-ton unit, guess what? You still got to supply the 2-ton unit and the dehumidifier and the makeup air. I'm not saying this to stress people out. I'm actually saying this for the opposite, okay? Because obviously I get very passionate about this. And at the end of the day, my message is keep it simple, stupid. We're going to do the best that we can and we're going to be okay. And the decisions that you make are not going to haunt you later as long as you think about them and as long as you have trade-offs. And one's going to cost you more in energy. One's going to cost you more in maintenance. One's going to cost you more in installing equipment up front. One's going to cost you more in long-term CapEx. But at the end of the day, we're just all trying to do the best we can. And for the customers and homeowners out there who are freaking out about making sure their home is perfect, we all are. We're trying our best. Right?
Yeah.
And we want to serve you the best that we can. And we're all trying very, very hard to do that, but we're not perfect. We can only work with what we have.
Yeah. Such a good message. And so true, right? It's just keep in mind that there is no such thing as the best thing. It's what's best and right for you, and working with a team who's willing and open to helping you weigh those options and help you make the decision of what's going to be best for you. Just because your neighbor installed the Zender ERV or whatever, doesn't mean that you need to have that one or, whatever. So I love that, Scott. This was so good. So I always end all of my podcasts on a little philosophical note. And I'm just curious, is there anything that you've been working through on a personal level, could be totally unrelated to building altogether, but just something you've been working through in terms of self-development? Any little lessons or wisdom or nuggets you want to leave with the listeners today?
Yeah, so we've been trying to figure out how to help more customers recently, which is tough because you can't really hire a superintendent that's fresh out of school like most builders can, or you can't hire someone from another builder and expect them to land on the job site and build the way we build. The way that we build requires an intense amount of supervision and a lot of knowledge and the drive to get better. And those people typically demand more money. So we're trying to learn to build into our process some hiring standards and a way to grow our team responsibly where we can help more homeowners. But also, as you know, I have my first baby on the way. So we're kind of we need to hire somebody and we need to train them so we can help more people. But also, we're about to go through a really busy phase in our life as well. So, we're trying to kind of balance making sure that we're home doing everything that we need to do as parents and as adults and as a first-time father, while also, just trying to get out there and help as many people as we can. We've been working on it. We're getting closer.
Yeah, you're about to go through a really big evolution. I know I've been on my own, just finding out you're having the baby is already just starts this whole inner journey of well, what do we do and how do we raise this human and what lessons are we going to teach them and how do we want to parent and all the things. So you guys are going to be amazing and I'm so happy for you.
I appreciate that.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Scott. I really appreciate you. This was amazing. How can people find you, connect with you, work with you, all the things?
Yeah, we're on Instagram at Tampa Home Guide. I have the same problem as one of your other guests recently who everyone thinks it's Guy. It's Guide, Guide. Yeah, Tampa Home Guide, Seven Pines Design Build. We have a website, Seven Pines Design Build. Feel free to reach out to us. We work anywhere in the Tampa Bay area.
Awesome. All right. I will drop all the links in the show notes. And there were some other things we talked about in there. I'll pull those out and link those at the bottom too. But thank you so much, Scott. I will talk to you soon.
Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Awakening Spaces podcast. If you're ready to take what you've learned and start applying it to your own home, then there's a few ways that we can support you. On our website, you can find a collection of free and paid guides and courses that will walk you through everything from designing a healthy home to choosing safe materials and reducing mold, chemical, and EMF exposure. And if you're looking for more personalized guidance, then we also offer one-on-one consulting and design support, where we act as your owner's representative to help you plan, manage, and execute your new build or renovation project with confidence. You can explore all of these offerings on our website at awakeningspaces.com. And if this podcast has helped you in any way, we would be so incredibly grateful if you would like, subscribe, and share this podcast so that it can reach more people. Until next time, thank you so much for listening and being here and stepping into what it means to be an awakened homeowner.